Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on ISO 14001 Environmental Management System, Remote Implementation and Certification. This webinar is conducted in collaboration with Credentials Global, our online ISO training partner. Please visit their website www.credentialsglobal.com for further details. I'm pleased to be here. My name is Sandeep. I'm a chartered engineering and management consulting professional with extensive industry experience. I have functional expertise in strategic management, operational excellence, system analysis and development, management systems and sustainability standards, risk management, technical regulations, conformity assessment, and accreditation. Agenda of this webinar is going to be setting the context, overview of the standard ISO 14001, benefits of being a certified organization, essential steps to ISO 14001 certification, performing remote implementation and audits of ISO 14001, ISO 14001-2015 documentation toolkit, and finally, we will see how much does it cost us. Aim of this webinar is to demonstrate how certification of your environmental management system can be achieved remotely without compromising on the requirements of the standard, depth of inquiry, or evidence required. Let's see what is a standard. The standard is a framework on which you base your management system. It is not designed to replace, but enhance the existing one. The first environmental management system standard, BS 7750, was published in 1992 by the British Standard Institution Group. In 1996, the International Organization for Standardization, that is ISO, created the ISO 14000 family of standards. ISO 14001 underwent revision in 2004. The current revision of ISO 14001 was published in September 2015. ISO 14001 is suitable for organizations of all types and sizes, be they private, not-for-profit, or governmental. It requires that an organization considers all environmental issues relevant to its operations, such as air pollution, water and sewage issues, waste management, soil contamination, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and resource use and efficiency. This presentation is designed to help top management and employees in the organization that decided to establish and maintain an ISO 14001-2015 based environmental management system and clear up any misconception regarding the standard requirements. ISO 14000 family comprises a number of standards. ISO 14001-2015, the environmental management systems requirements with guidance for use. The purpose of this international standard is to provide organizations with a framework to protect the environment and respond to changing environmental conditions in balance with socio-economic needs. It specifies requirements that enables an organization to achieve the intended outcomes it sets for its environmental management system. ISO 14004 provides guidance on the establishment, implementation, and maintenance and improvement of an environmental management system and its coordination with other management systems. ISO 14006 is intended to be used by those organizations that have implemented an environmental management system in accordance with ISO 14001, but can help integrate eco-design into other management systems. ISO 14064-1 specifies principles and requirements at the organization level for the quantification and reporting of GHG emissions, that is greenhouse gases, and its removal. Why should a company implement ISO 14001? There are several benefits, including reduced energy and material cost. By choosing renewable energy sources and committing to less in-house waste, production processes become more efficient and cost effective. According to some researchers, this is the number one benefit for the businesses to adopt an environmental management system. Reduced waste management cost. With less waste produced by the business, the cost of waste removal and offsite processing are cut significantly. During implementation, companies can create a framework that throws every stage of their waste handling under microscope, from storage through to labeling and finally transportation and disposal. Ongoing compliance with the legislations. ISO 14000 works in tandem with your regulatory responsibilities, ensuring that your company meets environmental targets set by both local and national government. With fines increasing for companies falling foul of their environmental obligations, together with the bad publicity this can cause for them, no organization can afford to ignore its environmental impact anymore. Reduced insurance premiums. Because there is a less risk of certified business creating an environmental incident or being found liable due to negligence in case of ecological damage. Improved company image and marketability. An article in Forbes shows that while customers are willing to pay extra for green businesses, are not willing to pay extra for green businesses, they now expect sustainability to be a baseline. If companies failing to meet its green targets or enact any kind of positive environmental change, then customers are likely to punish these organizations and shop elsewhere. ISO 14001 certification ensures that business meets current public expectations and can act as a badge that assures both potential customers and stakeholders that it takes green issues seriously. Pre-qualification in tender processes. Some business contracts will require your organization to demonstrate an adherence to the environmental standards. ISO 14001 often can pre-qualify you for this part of the application process. The research suggests that the organization's motivation for achieving ISO 14001 certification came from this demand from clients for evidence of environmental compliance before continuing to trade with them. With this figure rising year on year, helping define your corporate social responsibility policy. With an increasing number of businesses now employing the use of CSR policies to demonstrate adherence to wider social issues and concerns. ISO 14001 can be an effective way for an organization to easily cover its environmental obligations. Benefits of ISO 14001 to your customers. First, reputation. Many organizations want to promote their product or service as being more environmentally responsible than the competition. Purchasing a service from a company who is ISO 14001 2015 certified will allow them to do so legitimately. Reduce prices. ISO 14001 can help organizations to remove waste from processes, save on utilities and raw materials, and become more flexible towards change. Achieving these reductions can often bring an improvement in margins and therefore profit. It is apparent that ISO 14001 can provide you with the ability to attract more customers by reducing your prices due to the operation of more efficient environmental management system. Ease of doing business. One of the benefits of ISO 14001 is that your organization will have developed standardized way of doing business that is in line with the requirement of the standard. Whether dealing with communication, non-conformities, or customer complaints, your customer can expect a standard method and output from any ISO 14001 certified supplier. This has distinct benefit in terms of ease of doing business, product longevity, and end-of-life disposal. The new lifecycle perspective requirement of ISO 14001 look to both maximize the life of the product and ensure it is dealt with ethically and efficiently at end of life. Both are good news for your customer, and in turn, they ensure that these benefits are known to their end users. As a result, your product will be more attractive and desirable. The risk-based thinking entails determining key issues and requirements that can pose adverse or beneficial effects in a prioritized way to assure EMS can achieve its intended outcomes, prevent or reduce undesired effects, achieve continual improvement. Risks and opportunities that need to be addressed include significant environmental aspects, compliance obligations, and other priority issues for the organization. The issues with respect to the potential risk or opportunity could be environmental aspects, local or regional environmental conditions, compliance obligations, changing regulations, environmental performance, interested parties' concerns, financial or economical situation, new product development, changes in operations or technologies, for example, environmental, information technology, product lifecycle, including supply chain. The Plan Do Check Act cycle, PDCA, is critical to the operation of the environmental management system as specified by ISO 14001-2015 in terms of achievement against set objectives and continual improvement. It can be described as follows. Plan, the establishment objectives and processes that may deliver them in harmony with the environmental policy established by the organization. Do, the implementation of the plan process. Check, the monitoring and measuring of results versus the environmental policy, including all commitments, objectives, criteria, and the reporting of them. Act, the consequent actions taken to ensure continual improvement. It should be noted that PDCA cycle is a recognized management system methodology that is used across various business management systems. But its use is both compulsory and highly beneficial within ISO 14001-2015. Using the process approach is critical part of compliance and certification to ISO 14001-2015 standard, but it doesn't guarantee environmental or financial benefits in isolation. However, we can see from the diagram, a process-based environmental management system is a useful tool that provides continuity through operations, creating a link between policies, requirements, performances, objectives, and actions, and thereby reducing environmental impact. The process approach, therefore, becomes the most effective method of managing and mitigating environmental risk and impacts, given that it allows a more analytical and systemic view of process interactions and their effects, rather than focusing on more local problems that arise within the process. The management of the EMS by the system, that's environmental management system, that has been deployed with a full understanding of the relationship of the interacting processes and their effects will yield more short and long-term benefits to the organization seeking to implement and maintain ISO 14001-2015. Excuse me. ISO 14001 is made of 10 sections known as clauses. As in most other ISO management system standards, the requirements of ISO 14001 that needs to be satisfied are specified in clause 4 to 10. Unlike most of the ISO management system standards, an organization must comply with all the requirements in clauses 4 to 10. They cannot declare one or more clauses are being not applicable to them. Clause number 4, context of the organization. 4.1, understanding the organization and its context. This clause is significantly more prescriptive than in 2004 version of the standard, and it requires the organization to determine all internal and external issues that may be relevant to the achievement of the objectives of the environmental management system itself. This includes all elements which are and may be capable of affecting these objectives and outcome in the future. 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. The standard now requires the organization to assess who the interested parties are in terms of its environmental management system, what their needs and expectations may be, and consequently, if any of this should become compliance obligations. 4.3, determining the scope of the environmental management system. The scope and boundaries of environmental management system must now be thoroughly examined and defined considering the aforementioned interested parties and their needs, plus resulting compliance obligations, also requiring consideration as the EMS functions and physical boundaries and all product services and activities, including the organization's ability to exert control on external factors, with the result of the whole definition included in the EMS and kept critically as documented information. 4.4 Environmental Management System. The standard indicates that environmental management system should be established to achieve the outcome by using interacting processes and using the information specified in clause 4.1 and 4.2 to deliver continual improvement. The ultimate objective is to improve the organization's environmental performance. Clause number 5, leadership. 5.1, leadership and commitment. Again, this clause is far more prescriptive than in 2004 version, with the user reminded that the organization and top management retain responsibility for the performance of all internal and external performance factors at all times. It therefore makes perfect sense that the environmental policy and objectives are aligned with each other and with the strategic policies and overall direction of the business, including integration with other business systems where applicable. Provision must be made for resources to ensure that the environmental management system can be operated efficiently, and top management must ensure that the people with the responsibility within the EMS have the correct support, training, and guidance to complete their task effectively. Communication is also critical from a leadership perspective, and communication methods and frequencies must be defined and established for both internal and external interested parties. In summary, it is the responsibility of the leadership of the organization to show an enhanced level of leadership, involvement, and cooperation in the operation of environmental management system. 5.2, environmental policy. Top management have the responsibility to establish an environmental policy which is appropriate for the organization in terms of size, scope, activities, and ambitions of the organization, and provides a formal framework for setting objectives. Obviously, the policy should include a commitment to pollution prevention, environmental protection, and all factors contextual to the organization itself. Meeting compliance and regulatory factors is obviously a key element, and a method of capturing and recording this must be established. Finally, and vitally, the environmental policy must provide a commitment to the continual improvement of the EMS and its results. Critically, the environmental policy must be maintained as documented information, be communicated within the organization, and be available to all interested parties. 5.3, organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. The standard states that it is the responsibility of top management to ensure that roles, responsibilities, and authorities are delegated and communicated effectively. The responsibility shall also be assigned to ensure that the environmental management system meet the terms of ISO 14001-2015 standard itself, and that the EMS performance can be accurately reported to the top management. Clause number 6, planning. 6.1, action to address risk and opportunities. This clause replaced preventive action in the 2015 revision of 14001 standard. The standard states that the organization should establish, implement, and maintain the processes required to address the requirements of the whole of the planning section itself. When planning the EMS, consideration need to be made on the context of the organization, that is section 4.1, and the needs and expectation of interested parties, that's section 4.2, as well as the scope of the environmental management system. Risk and opportunity must be considered in respect of these elements, as well as legal and regulatory issues. and the organization's environmental aspect themselves. This outcome needs to ensure that the EMS can meet its intended outcomes and objectives, that any external factors that may affect performance are avoided, and that continual improvement can be achieved. 6.2, environmental objectives and planning to achieve them. The standard advises that the environmental objectives should be established at appropriate levels and intervals. Having considered the identified environmental aspects, risk and opportunities, and compliance obligations, the characteristics of the set objectives are important too. They need to be consistent with the organization's environmental policy, measurable where possible, able to be monitored, communicated effectively, and be such that they can be updated when circumstances require. Once more, it is mandatory that documented information is kept outlining this process and its outputs. The standard further states that the environment that need to be determined to ensure objectives can be achieved. This can be thought of in terms of what needs to be done, when needs to be done by, what resources are required to achieve it, who is responsible for the objectives being achieved, how results are to be measured and progress ensured, and consideration on how these objectives can be implemented into existing business systems. Clause number 7, support. 7.1, resources. Simply put, the standard advises the organization that resources to achieve stated objectives and show continual improvement must be made available. 7.2, competence. Employee competence must meet the terms of ISO 14001:2015 standard by ensuring that the people given responsibility for EMS tasks are capable and confident. Related to this, it stands to reason that the experience, training, and/or education of the individual must be of the required standard, and that any training required is identified and delivered with measurable actions taken externally or internally to ensure that this level of competence exists. Predictably, this process and its output need to be recorded as documented information for the environmental management system. 7.3, awareness. Awareness is closely related to competence in the standard. Employees must be made aware of the environmental policy and its content, any current and future impacts that may affect their task, what their personal performance means to the environmental management system and its objectives, including the positives or improved performance, and what the implications of poor performance may be to the environmental management system. 7.4, communication. Processes for internal and external communication need to be established and recorded as documented information within the environmental management system. The key elements that need to be decided, actioned, and recorded are what needs to be communicated, how it should be done, who needs to receive the communication, and what intervals it should be done. It should be noted here that any communication output should be consistent with related information and content generated by the EMS for the sake of consistency. 7.5, documented information. Documented information, which you will have seen mentioned several times during this presentation, marks another change implemented in 2015 standard. The change is designed to allow each organization to have the ability to shape documented information to their own requirements in general, with the exception of the mandatory components mentioned specifically in the standard, and therefore in this presentation. The ISO 14001:2015 standard advises us that the environmental management system should include all documented information that it declares mandatory, and also anything viewed as a critical to the environmental management system and its operation. It should also be noted that the amount of documented information that an organization requires will differ according to the size, operating sector, and complexity of compliance obligations faced by the business. Clause number 8, operation. 8.1, operational control and planning. While the standard acknowledges that the operational control will greatly depend on the size, nature, compliance obligations, and environmental aspects of an organization, the scope is given to the individual organization to plan and ensure the desired results are achieved. The methods suggested by the standards are the processes be designed in such a way that consistency is guaranteed and error eliminated. Technology is used to improve control, and it is ensured that the personnel are trained and competent. Processes should be performed in an agreed and prescribed manner. Those processes should be measurable, and the documented information should match the requirements to ensure operational control. Outsourced processes must also be considered and controlled. Appropriate measures must be made to define and control the competency of outsourced services suppliers, including consideration of the resources, knowledge, competence, and ability to meet objectives. Consideration must be made for the degree to which the organization and the outsourced providers share process control, and also how control can be made through established elements such as the existing procurement processes. As ever, opportunities for improvement must always be considered and identified. The standard also recognizes that the degree of control the organization has over an outsourced product and services can vary from absolute if taking place on site to very little if the activity takes place remotely. However, it is suggested that there are factors that nonetheless should be considered. As expected, compliance obligations should be considered and controlled. All direct and associated environmental impact should be evaluated and controlled, and risk and opportunities associated with the provision of the service itself. 8.2 Emergency Preparedness and Control. Emergency preparedness control is a key element of mitigation of environmental risk. The standard informs us that it is the responsibility of an organization to be prepared, and a number of elements should be considered and planned for. Actions to mitigate incident must be developed, as well as internal and external communication methods and appropriate methods for emergency response. Consideration of varying types of environmental incidents needs to be considered, as does root cause analysis and corrective action procedures to respond to incidents after they occur. Regular emergency response testing and relevant training needs to be considered and undertaken. And assembly routes and evacuation procedures defined and communicated. List of key personnel and emergency agencies, think cleanup agencies, local emergency services, local environmental office or agencies, law enforcement agencies should be established and made available. And it's often good practice to form partnership with similar neighboring organizations with whom you can share mutual services and provide help in the event of environmental incident. Clause number 9, performance evaluation. 9.1, monitoring, measuring, analysis, and evaluation. The organization not only has to measure environmental progress, but should consider its environmental aspects, compliance obligations, and operational controls when tackling this clause. The methods established should have consideration to ensure that the monitoring and measuring periods are aligned with the needs of environmental management system for data and results. The results are accurate, consistent, and can be reproduced. And the results are consistent and can be used to identify trends. It should also be noted that the results should be reported to the personnel with authority and responsibility to initiate action on the basis of the output themselves. 9.2, internal audits. Internal audits and auditors should be independent and have no conflict of interest over the audit subjects. The standard reminds us, and it should be noted, that the non-conformity should be subject to corrective action. When considering the results of previous audits, the results of previous internal and external audits, and any previous non-conformities and resulting actions to repair them should be taken into account. 9.3, management review. It should be noted that contrary to popular belief, the management review need not to be done all at once. It can be a series of high-level or board meetings with topics tackled individually. Although it should be of strategic and top management level, complaints from interested parties should be reviewed by top management with resultant improvement opportunities identified. It should be remembered that the management review generally is the one function that must be carried out accurately and diligently to ensure that the function of the environmental management system and resulting elements can follow suit. It goes without saying that all details and data from the management review must be documented and recorded to ensure that the environmental management system can follow the specific requirements and general strategic directions for the organizations detailed therein. Clause number 10, improvement. 10.1 general. Outputs from management reviews, internal audits, and compliance and performance evaluation should be used to form the basis for improvement actions. Improvement examples should include corrective action, reorganization, innovation, and continual improvement programs. 10.2 non-conformity and corrective action. Any non-conformity needs to be reacted upon by taking actions to control it and deal with the consequences. Once identified, a non-conformity should trigger a corrective action in order to remove the cause of the non-conformity and prevent its reoccurrence. The effectiveness of action taken must be evaluated and documented, along with the originally reported information about the non-conformity, corrective action, and the results achieved. 10.3, continual improvement. It's a key aspect of environmental management system. To achieve and maintain the environmental management system's suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness regarding the organization's objectives. In conclusion, ISO 14001-2015 provides organizations with guidance to mitigate environmental risk and reduce impacts with the ultimate goal of being environmental protection. But delivering all of the clauses of the standard and truly understanding them can benefit the organization, as well as the greater environment in many ways. Accreditation and compliance can bring reputational, motivational, and financial benefits to your organization through improved efficiency and reduction in waste, along with the improvement in your supply chain. All of these elements are closely related to your organization's ability to deliver satisfaction to your customers and fulfill the expectations and wishes of your stakeholders, while protecting the environment for future generations. Bearing all this in mind, can your organization afford not to have ISO 14001-2015 Environmental Management System certification? During this period of disruption caused by coronavirus COVID-19, many organizations are relying on remote working using conferencing facilities like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and Google Hangouts. There are many business activities which can be completed remotely, allowing people to work from home and reduce the organization's carbon footprint in the process. We could find that even after coronavirus measures, organizations maintain high level of remote working. The general framework for management system standards implementation and auditing is changing. Current developments such as technological change, digitization, increasing demand for agile interactions, fast-paced business environments, and globalization have a great influence on testing, inspection, and certification sector. Computer-aided implementation and audit techniques can make significant contribution to increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of consulting interventions and certification audits. Now let's see what are the steps necessary for ISO 14001 compliance. First, awareness training. Your organization should raise awareness about various standards covered under EMS. You should hold separate training meetings for top management, middle management, junior level management, which will help to create a motivating environment ready for implementation. Policy and objectives. Your organization would develop an integrated environmental policy, health and safety policy, or information safety policy, whatever the standard you're choosing to implement, and relevant objectives to help meet the requirement. By working with top level management, your company should hold workshops with all levels of management staff to outline the integrated objectives. Internal gap analysis, your organization should identify and compare the level of compliance of existing systems against the requirement of the standard under your new environmental management system. Relevant staff should all understand the operations of your organization and develop a process map for the activities within the business. Documentation and process design. The organization should create documentation of the processes as per requirement of the standard. You should write and implement a manual, functional procedures, work instructions, standard operating procedures, and provide associated records and forms. Documentation and process implementation. Process or documents developed in the earlier step should be implemented across the organization, covering all the departments and activities. The organization should hold a workshop on the implementation as per applicable ISO standard requirement. Internal audit. A robust internal audit system for the organization is essential. Internal auditors training is recommended, and many certification bodies can provide you internal auditors training, and even our partner Credentials Global also offers the internal auditor training on its online training platform. It is important to implement corrective actions for improvement in each of the audited documents in order to bridge gaps and ensure effectiveness of the environmental management system. Organize a management system review meeting. Top-level management must review various official business aspects of the organization which are relevant to the standard being implemented. Review the policy, objectives, results of internal audit, results of process performance, result of complaints, feedback, legal compliance, results of risk assessment, incident, and develop an action plan following the meeting, which must be recorded. A thorough gap analysis of the implemented system should be conducted. A formal pre-certification gap analysis should be conducted to assess effectiveness and compliance of the system implementation in the organization. This final gap analysis will prepare your organization for the final certification audit. Corrective actions. Organization should be ready for final certification audit, providing that the gap analysis audit conducted in the last step and all the non-conformities have been assigned corrective actions. Check that all the significant non-conformities are closed and the organization is ready for the final certification audit. Final certification audit. Once completed, your organization is so fully recommended for registration to ISO 14001. What is a remote ISO implementation and auditing? A remote management system implementation and audit, also known as e-implementation and audit, is exactly same as the implementation and audit, but using the electronic means to remotely deliver training, guidance, consultancy, and obtain audit evidence and evaluate it objectively in order to determine the extent of conformity to the audit criteria. Remote intervention techniques are similar to those used in person, but for instance, you can share file via email, Google Drive, Box, etc. In addition, the company can provide documents by sharing its desktop screen or via video conference using Skype, Zoom, etc., which is also used for interviews together with the phone. Surprisingly, reviewing documents and records virtually can be even more effective than doing so on-site. Some areas that can present difficulties during a remote intervention involve manufacturing processes or product storage. In these cases, remote interventions can use live video or even surveillance video to exchange necessary information. Remote audit methods are already mentioned in ISO 19011 guideline for auditing management system. According to the standard, the nature and scope of the remote audit methodology may differ. Let's see what are the benefits of remote auditing. It saves time and money with the use of technology. Most of data, if not all, is accessible from anywhere, such as cloud portal. So why waste so much time traveling to check documentation that can be available by other means? In this sense, there will be significant reduction in money and time spent on commuting to the audit location. In addition, interviews and even observations can be conducted through popular platforms like Skype or Zoom, which are regularly used by many of the companies already. Avoiding traveling to difficult locations. Some locations to audit can be difficult to access for many reasons. Maybe they are just in an isolated area, or strict permits are needed to get in. Even visas sometimes are required if audits are conducted internationally. With a remote audit, you avoid these difficulties. Logistics related to auditing are not needed anymore. When conducting remote audits, usually organizations are relieved from logistics related to booking conference rooms and cleaning after audit teams leaves, as well as worrying about audit team accommodation, interruptions to employees, regular workflow, and other related inconveniences experienced during an on-site audit. The audit team will be more efficient. Working from the home office environment, the audit team will feel more comfortable since they will be able to use all the necessary tools such as high-speed internet, monitors, printers, etc. This way, the productivity will be substantially increased in an e-audit in comparison with an on-site audit, needing fewer hours to complete a certain task. Let's see what are the barriers to remote implementation and auditing. Confidentiality, environmental, and data protection. Ensure agreement between ISO certification body and your organization for about CSDP issues. The agreement should be documented. Use of information and communication technology. There has to be a stable connection with good online connection. The ICT allows access to relevant documented information, including software, database, and records. It is possible to make authentication and identification of include people, preferably with image. If observation of facilities, processes, activities, etc. is relevant to achieve ISO management system implementation and auditing objectives, it is possible to access them by video. People in the organization, you should check if it is possible to access and interview people relevant to the management system standard. The people involved in the implementation auditing should know how to use the information and communication tools that are going to be used during the audit or consulting intervention. And finally, complexity of the organization. In case of complex organizations, processes, or product and services, a careful analysis of the feasibility of remote implementation auditing to be fully evaluated, and the organization's conformity to all the requirement of the standard should be checked. Remote interventions have come to stay. Their advantages are unquestionable over the traditional methods, although there are still some barriers to overcome. Traditional audits, even when they have been well planned and executed, may cause a certain amount of inconvenience and disruptions to the organization. In addition, business managers are increasingly finding these interventions very attractive, since reduction in cost and resources are undeniable using virtual methodologies. Also, remote interventions are an alternative for more efficient and productive methods of ISO training, consulting, and certification, not only from the point of view of your organization, but to the employees as well. Now, what's our approach? Drawing on a practical know-how about the environmental management system and proven management system consultancy and certification expertise, we can help you implement an ISO 14000 compliant environmental management system with ease. We provide 100% guarantee of successful certification when you engage our team. We also provide ISO 14001-2015 documentation toolkit. It provides generic benchmark templates for documenting environmental management system that includes environmental policy and environmental objectives, environmental policy manual, environmental procedures manual, environmental aspects and impact assessment manual, emergency preparedness plan, plant safety manual, and relevant records and formats templates. Let's come to very important question now. How much it's going to cost? Before implementing ISO 14001, one needs to consider the cost and the project length, which are further influenced by the detailed understanding of the implementation of phases. Any cost is painful in tough economic times. Organizations that want to reduce cost without compromising the system are looking at ISO management system standards. Implementation costs are driven by the perception of risk and how much risk an organization is prepared to accept. Four costs need to be considered when implementing this type of project. Internal resources. The system covers a wide range of business functions, including management, human resources, IT, production facilities, and the environmental management systems. These resources will be required during the implementation of the environmental management system. External resources. Experienced consultant will save huge amount of time and cost. They will also prove useful during the internal audits and ensure a smooth transition towards certification. Certification, only a few approved certification agencies currently assess companies against ISO 14001, but fees are not much more than against other standards. Implementation. These costs depend largely on the baseline environmental management practices available within the organization. On average, implementation of the system such as this can take 1 to 4 months and depends largely on the standard of conduct and environmental practices and the management support that is shown at the top. The size and nature of the organization, the maturity of the environmental practices within the organization, and existing documentation. So I would like to thank you once again. And please do get in touch with us if you are seriously interested in implementing the environmental management system in your organization. We are here to assist you acquire certification with a purpose and value. Folks at Standard Certification Council, we would like to keep you up to date on what we are saying, thinking, and doing during these difficult times. If you haven't already, you can like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you once again. Bye bye. Stay home and take care.